W.J.R.G. We are Connecticut's #1 gospel internet radio station on another great Thursday. Tonight is Action First Broadcast, and we broadcast live every Thursday with my man, Dr. Wayne McQuay. What's up, my brother?
All right, Doc. How you doing? All right.
We are streaming live on Facebook as well. And every Thursday we try to bring in a special guest, someone who's a blessing to our community. And tonight we have a young lady from the New Haven Independent newspaper, should I say? All right, Ms. Maya McFadden. How you doing? God bless.
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I am blessed. It's good to have you live in the studio, right? And like I said, someone that's being a blessing to our people. Now, first of all, were you born and raised in New Haven?
I was, yes. I was on the sheltered side. I have a few siblings, so I was very much comfortable just wandering around life with them. But I was born and raised in New Haven, more in the Fairhaven Heights area. That's where my father was at most of the time.
Okay, so what was it like growing up as a youth in New Haven?
It was good. I mean, I honestly am getting a lot of like my experiences in New Haven now as I'm a little bit older. Just because, like I said, I was a little bit sheltered growing up, so we really I didn't like know about all of the like just historic stuff that happens in New Haven. I wasn't always going to like the long-term festivals and stuff that's been around. I was just really always home with my siblings and parents and enjoying that.
So how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're in the middle, oldest, or youngest?
I'm in the middle. I have 3 older and 1 younger, and then I'm in between that.
Okay, so you're a journalist for the New Haven Independent. What made you decide to become a journalist?
I mean, I like to tell people a specific story that basically guided me down the path, if that's okay for me to share. So basically, I went to Wilbercross High School, and I ended up going to Gateway for my first year at Gateway Community College, and I was finishing up my first year. It was like the final semester, and I was put in a media class involuntarily, but it ended up guiding me basically, so I'm happy I was. And specifically, obviously it's a class, a college course and whatnot, so we did all the college course type stuff. But there was one specific project in that class that just made me really interested, and I did have exposure to journalism. I took a few classes like at Wilbercross, and I was interested at one point in photojournalism. But my actual interest came from that Gateway class where we did a project, and we were basically tasked with picking a historic moment in history, in American history specifically, and we had to pick that moment and look into the archives of how it was presented in the media. And so we chose something that was just we were personally interested in, and just wanted to learn more. Each person chose something different. I ended up choosing the tragic murder of Trayvon Martin.
Wow.
And I was just really interested in diving into how that was presented in the media. And so the project was picking that moment and spending time and research looking into the archives of a few different media outlets and basically paying attention to how that news was broke the first week, like how was it presented to the community and whatnot, to the world. And the first day, all of the kind of articles and stories that were put out were very similar. Obviously, just the basic news of what occurred and whose life was lost. But what really interested me and kind of blew my mind was the second day coverage and on, because I started to notice that there were specific media sites, and it didn't really matter which sites. It was just the fact that it was happening. Specific sites that were leading the story or putting high up in the story, like this young 17-year-old was killed, but he had a D in English class, and I was like just confused and like kind of mind blown of like why that was the lead of the story, why that was important to put in the story, or like we have photos like screenshots of street coverage, street cameras that show he hung out at the corner store a lot, and that was high up in the story. And it's like, why? To me, I was just confused why that was the most important part when you see this person lost their life and it was minor and they were, to me, it was unfair. So yeah, just doing that project basically made me, surprisingly, I guess you kind of choose your career path or your interest based on like what you see, like the good that you see. But I was kind of opposite in the sense that like I saw media doing things very wrong, and that made me just have an interest in at least attempting to do things correctly in my own way, or learning how to do things correctly, and just yeah, confronting that stuff too, like calling it out and saying like that's not right, that's not the way things should be going about. So basically that class at Gateway was what guided me down the path of wanting to learn more.
And keep in mind, that's what, like I said, that's what some journalists people do, right? They want to try to find dirt or whatever they can find, to make that person look bad. That's what they want to do in most cases, all right? I mean, that's why you always got to let your good outshine your bad. Now, who inspired you growing up?
Like I said, I was mostly around family growing up. So I would probably say my family, like my immediate family of like my mom and dad, my siblings, and my grandparents. They, yeah, just always showed me the sensical routes to go, and like the yeah, just the appropriate things to do. And even if that wasn't happening, there was always that conversation of like what is correct, and if you were going to make a decision, then at least know what my expectation is of you. So yeah, I would say my family is still my main inspiration for just wanting to grow and do things in life.
We're speaking live with Miss Maya McFadden. She's works at the New Haven Independent. Now, you spoke about Gateway Community College, and you went to another college, right, as well. How important is education today, especially for our youth?
Yeah, I mean, this all kind of connects even beyond my own experience, but also like being the education reporter, I'm seeing firsthand the impacts of an education or the lack of an education. And I think we all do. I think that's actually, I was having a conversation during an interview recently, and I've kind of been stuck with this point that this one person made, which was like, even if you don't have a child in school right now, or you don't have a niece or nephew in school, you're still impacted by the lack of an education in your community, or the education that your community is getting, because you have a neighbor who has a kid, or you have someone down the street, or whatever it is. You're surrounded by folks who either have their education or don't have their education, and that's obviously depending on the resources that they've gotten or the choices they've made. But I definitely think that education as a whole is important, and it's not necessarily a need for formal education. I got a lot out of my post-secondary experience, like in college and whatnot. But I think also, I mean, I went to school with a focus in journalism, but a lot of my colleagues didn't, and I learned from them every day. Like, you don't necessarily have to have that education in a specific career field, but just to actually, I think it's more about, to me, having that love for wanting to learn, or that interest in wanting to learn all the time, whether it's from other people or reading a book or watching a YouTube video. You just want to, I feel like folks should want to have that as an option.
All right, this is Action First Broadcast with Dr. Wayne McCray. I'm Jerry Green, and we have tonight as a special guest Maya McFadden. All right, and she works for the New Haven Independent. Now let's talk about your position at the New Haven Independent, and what exactly do you do?
So currently, I am the education reporter at the Independent. I was, when I first started, well, backtracking a little to officially first starting, while I was in school in Massachusetts, I I had gotten a scholarship to get a paid internship at wherever I wanted. So the Independent was the first place I reached out to because I knew I wanted to come home to New Haven. So that was my first introduction to the Independent. Is just starting as an intern. And then when I graduated in 2019, the editor at the time, Paul Bass, offered me the full-time position straight out of school. So I immediately jumped on that. And for that first 2020 to 2021, I was a staff reporter, just kind of touching on a little bit of everything, running around the community, doing park stuff, doing city hall stuff, just basically everything, which we all still do because it's a small outlet. But more recently, I believe around the end of 2021, I stepped into the role of the education reporter, which is basically just deep diving into the public school system and how it works, who's in charge, why and how people are making decisions. And I personally have been interested for this past school year. I focused a lot on getting the perspectives of students and staff. That's like something that I feel like it tells a lot and it can make change in a significant way. So I spent a lot of time, and I plan to hopefully this school year as well, get back into the classrooms and just write about how a teacher puts together a lesson, write about the work that goes into that, write about what they're struggling with at the moment and how that can be supported. And the same for the students. How are they engaging with the lesson that they're getting? Is it interesting? Is it not interesting? And just getting their perspectives.
Yeah, I see Dr. Wayne has those who are viewing us on Facebook Live. It was a school walkout.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. I know you was a part of that as far as writing about that story. So
yeah, so I covered that actually with my colleague. It's somewhat of a funny story, not the actual walkout, because that was obviously very serious and monumental. But the Independent has its own radio station, and at one point in time, I was working with a colleague, Nora, and we did a segment on the radio station called Word on the Street. So we would wander New Haven and just ask folks, like, what's the word on the street? What are you up to? And it was really just a goal of, like, putting a face to New Haveners. We constantly in the media have, like, the face of the mayor all the time, the face of the mayor's spokesperson, and just those higher up people, but we don't always see who makes up New Haven. So that was the goal with that radio segment. But that story actually came out of us wandering downtown one day and just seeing a bunch of students flood in, and we're like, well, I guess this is the word on the street. So it didn't end up being a specific word. Actually, we did have another little story that was a word on the street with one of the students. But that larger story was a focus on what the walkout was about. We saw and heard directly from students about what their needs were. And I don't think we hear that often enough. We have maybe a roundtable conversation, or like school leaders have roundtable conversations, or just a brief survey they send out to hear from students. But when you hear it firsthand, face to face, I think it means a lot more, and you get more comfortable sharing what you actually feel. So that walkout was where hundreds of New Haven students left school midday and basically were rallying around wanting more mental health support in their schools, particularly after COVID and during COVID, because they were dealing with, and they continue to deal with, a lot of mental health related things. So just seeing that was just really cool, because I think back to when I was in high school not too long ago, and I know my graduating class and the students at the time were very much invested, but I feel like the generation that's in school now are invested, and they're not afraid to step up and step out no matter the repercussions or anything like that. So it was really cool to see.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever thought about writing a book, being an author?
I have, yeah. I put it somewhat on the back burner more recently because I just don't have a topic. I don't know what I would write a book about. I thought stuff like a day in the life of a journalist, like what actually comes with being a young journalist. And because there's ups and downs to it, you're young, sometimes people don't take you serious, or you're not the editor of the outlet, so people don't respond to you, they respond to them, type of thing. So there's definitely a lot that comes with it, and it can be mentally taxing a lot. You're dealing with like seeing people in their sometimes like hardest, like dealing with a very hard situation, and you have to navigate that with sensitivity. So I've thought about writing about stuff like that. I just haven't jumped on it. I did. I mean, growing up, being an author was. If you look at all my like school yearbooks and stuff, they're like, "What does Maya want to be when she grows up?" I always said an author. I used to have this dream of writing children's books, so I've also thought about doing that. So it's definitely on the list of what I want to do at some point, but I just don't know when.
And you have the name Maya, Maya Angelou. Was that ever when they gave you your name? Was that ever in consideration, or you don't know?
I don't definitely know. My mom, I'm like 99% sure my mom will say that I'm named after Maya Angelou. But my dad, he'll maybe occasionally say that, but I think he'll more so say I'm named after Maya the singer. So at least I guess they came to some consensus because their two favorite people have the same name. So I think that's basically where it came from.
All right, now how has the New Haven Independent impacted our community? Right? I mean, as a whole. I mean, because I know you got different other the inner city news and different ones, different organizations. How has the New Haven Independent impacted our community?
I think that I think the Independent is really unique, not just because I'm an employee there, but I think that it is a reference point for a lot of folks, obviously specifically in New Haven, but even the way that we go about writing is not the same that other media outlets always go. And I think that even folks who at one point lived in New Haven, I hear it all the time, like and moved out of New Haven, they still refer to the Independent to learn about their city. Like they can go to a Connecticut paper, but it's not going to always be focused on the city they grew up in. So I think the Independent is really unique in that sense, and also just the fact that you have a you have a source where you can refer to that will tuck and touch on a little bit of everything. We do the arts, we do the entertainment, we do the um, public policy type of stuff like city hall, the mayor, board of alders. We do board of education and education beyond just the logistical stuff like cool there's a new policy in place, but we also will focus if there's new policy. I know there's one story I wrote in the past that there was a new policy put in place at one school, and I think most media outlets would just do a quick story of what the policy is, but how we usually go about things is really focusing on what the community has to say. So it wasn't just a story of what new policy is in place or what's this new law. It's yes, this is happening, but how is this impacting the community? We refer to our sources that we've gained over time and just hear from them. How is this going to impact you? Is higher taxes going to make you have to sell your houses? Like just realistically presenting a face with the issue and not just always leaving it as this very subtle or short explanation of what's going on. So I think the Independent does that really well, and that's what I enjoy most is just hearing folks' voices about things.
All right, Dr. Wayne, you have any questions? I see. So you put your face up there on the screen.
Yeah, I tell you, I knew it was going to be epic, and I want to thank you again for taking the invite with us. It's so informative and to hear the views of the community through the journalists, that's very key, And one of the things that you were saying about um, as uh, one of your goals and something that you would like to do with the children books. I was like, I thought that was really key because in journalism, and when you said that, I seen like animation kind of storytelling journalism style for our babies, and that's needed. We got all these books coming out and all these things that are happening. So I think you really need to focus on that and make it a reality, because that would be key, and then I see that, from the journalism perspective, in the animation format, for the
Right.
kids,
Yeah.
the kids time, the kids journalism,
Yeah.
that I think that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited about that idea. I actually have been also dabbling in putting together ideas around directly working with the youth. I think because I've been spending so much time in the schools, I mean, kids are always fun. Like, I know they're a lot of work,
Yeah.
but they're just always fun. Like, even, especially because they like kind of look at things so differently, not the kind of structural way that we have, or
Right.
you learn to as you grow up. So I think that that's one thing that I usually like love the most, and I'm actually planning, hopefully still it's in the works, planning on volunteering at one of the schools to help them establish a journalism club.
Wow,
So I
that's
think that
good.
will be also kind of a start to the whole writing thing as well, because just seeing the kids in actions can give you inspiration to like, what will that animation look like how do kids like, I've visited a few classrooms actually, like this past school year, just to talk about what I do, and it's like ranged from like high school to like middle school, and it's just really funny because I feel like I just have like snapshots in my head. Like there's one class that I was in, and like the kid is like, so how exactly do you hold this camera, and it's like upside down and they have it wrapped around their waist. So I feel like though, like that alone is just like a really fun animation type of an idea that can be put into a story, but obviously still having that component of like, what's journalism, how can it be beneficial to young kids, because it's not always really, at least for me, about like creating a bunch of journalists or like inspiring them necessarily to get into journalism. I think back to me when I was getting into journalism, I've grown a lot and I've learned a lot, and just me being a very introverted person, it's kind of a double-edged sword where it's like I'm introverted, but I'll run outside and just talk to a random stranger. Like that doesn't like scare me anymore. It was something at one point that did scare me, or like even making eye contact with folks, or learning how to take notes. And so I just feel like those are small things you get from journalism that can be taught to kids. You learn the importance of advocating for yourself. If you didn't quite get that answer or that question right, you learn how to form it better so you can get the answer that you want, or have them focus in on what you want. So I feel like there's a lot of just life skills that come out of focusing in on journalism. So that would really be my main goal, is like teaching, or at least being a part of the teaching of journalism, and just teaching kids about the basics. Like, I mean, I still don't consider myself an extrovert, but I do this job every day and I love it. Like there's a balance to it, and it is a lot of fun. I connected with so many people now, and that's another thing. I've interviewed several different authors and like even children's book authors, so I have the resources. New Haven has so many resources and people that do so much, so that's another exciting part of it, because I can reach out to them and get additional information.
Okay, since you brought that up, name one person you're the most proud of that you interviewed.
One person?
Well, somebody popular.
That's hard. I
Good question.
Right. I mean, I always say I got into journalism because I am a very nosy person. Like, I don't talk much all the time, but I can sit and listen to someone tell their life story for hours. Like, I've spent time, like, even if I've been on the street needing, like, I would need to talk to one person for a quick 5 minutes, and I'll spend 2 hours talking to them, like, just on the corner of Dixwell or something, because I just love hearing from people. So there's probably a lot of those type of people that I could mention, but what comes to mind in the moment is this is hard. I would say probably the three women who put together the
W.J.R.G.
Gun Violence Botanical Garden over in West
Oh,
Hills.
yeah. Oh, wow.
Miller, Fulcher.
Yeah, and DeRoche, right?
Yeah, and there's
Alice.
actually four of them, and one of them passed away, unfortunately. But the group of them, I don't know, I'm just so inspired by like how much strength and courage they have. I in this moment in time would never be able to imagine like the loss of a child and turning that into something empowering for the whole community. And they did that. Like it's that garden in itself is a really amazing thing, but those three women that put it together are amazing. Marlene Pratt, she was also a teacher. I believe she's retired now from career, but even that in itself is like you're a teacher and you're doing this huge monumental project for New Haven. It's kind of insane. I feel really honored to have met them and like interviewed them. I spent a lot of time putting together stories of them from the start, arguing with folks trying to get the space, then moving on to trying to get the money, then moving on to the planning and what it should look like. And then there's one story that I'm really proud of that I did with them, and it was really just highlighting their.
We have a phone call too.
So, oh yeah.
So I answer your question. Bob, you there?
I'm here, Jerry. How are you?
Good. This is Bob McCormick. Okay. He does news on this station, and also he.
Journalist to another.
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I do.
Oh, you're good.
I'm doing just fine. I actually had a couple of questions for you because I'm a broadcast journalist. You're more or less a print journalist.
Right.
Were your parents your inspirations growing up to becoming a writer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it would be directly writing. I don't recall like seeing them. They were working a lot, so it's not like I saw them like always journaling or something. But I think in the sense of inspiring me to know how to navigate conversations with people, like I think of my father, who's a police officer, who's a retired police officer, which policing now has so many mixed reviews and whatnot. But I know when I write a policing story or I'm just in the realm of police officers, I do think of my dad and coming to that story with sensitivity and obviously not diminishing like the accuracy and the facts that need to be presented. But that would be one situation. My mom is a small business owner, so when I'm interviewing a small business or an entrepreneur, I think of her and think to have that sensitivity. My oldest sister is a nurse, so when I'm in the medical realm of interviewing folks, I come to those folks with sensitivity. So I think my family and obviously especially my parents have definitely inspired me and continue to just make me have that second that second thought before presenting something to the community.
All right,
I had one last question for her. How do you like covering news in the New Haven area?
I enjoy it a lot. I've definitely learned a lot, and one thing I mentioned earlier is I grew up pretty sheltered, not in a negative way at all. I'm a very nostalgic person, so I'm always like wanting to do something that I did at one point in my childhood. But I feel like I'm getting a new kind of light, or just seeing a new light of New Haven. Like I didn't even know about like the Freddie Fixer parade. Like I wasn't something I went to growing up, or I just didn't know about all of these historic things. And now I'm getting that experience. And I know it's not the same as like doing it as a little kid, but it's still fun nevertheless. So I feel like, and even if you were exposed to that kind of stuff, I think there's always something new to learn about New Haven, which is really cool. So yeah, it's kind of just like learning on a daily basis. You're always like, I don't think I have come home any day that I'm working and haven't like been stuck with the thought of like, hey, I didn't know that. Like I've learned something new today about New Haven or the people in New Haven. So I do definitely enjoy covering New Haven a lot, and just the importance of hyper-local news and like really honing in on one community. I think it really has its benefits and is significant to New Haven.
I just got a few more questions. What is your greatest accomplishment you're the most proud of?
I mean, personally, I guess thinking about the work that I do would be similar to what I was mentioning a few minutes ago, which would be just my growth as a person. I think that's one accomplishment that, yeah, just I'll always be proud of. You look back at like how you would have reacted to something in the past, and like to get more specific, I feel like jumping into journalism when you're young, you have this idea, like I mentioned, like folks won't take you serious, or like how do I approach this person how do I approach the mayor, or how do I approach a state representative, and there's like that intimidation, and I think that I've just grown a lot with things like that, and then also yeah, just I think I'm also not I think I am really proud of just the connections that I've grown. Like I said, like I didn't know a lot. Even being born and raised in New Haven, I feel like I didn't know a lot about it while growing up, and now I am learning all of this. And it's funny because I also like bump into folks who remember me as like a little mini me. Like I was always with my dad. He was like police officer. He was a coach. He was like he would bring me all these places around New Haven, but my memory is horrible and it's just childhood, so it's just like all a blur. So I've been places in New Haven that I don't even remember, and it's like there are times when like I'm there for a story and working, and it's like deja vu moment. It's like I don't know when I've been here, but I know I've been here before. And so yeah, that just goes on to define. I would say my second or one of another accomplishment is just the connections that I've built in New Haven, and like the way I've better understood the city, and yeah, just because it's if you really do a deep dive into New Haven, I feel like you can understand why folks have the mentality they have, or why folks feel the way, or advocate for the things they advocate, like you advocate for, like you just see that firsthand, and I think that's a really amazing thing to experience. So yeah, just the connections that I've been able to build personally and professionally.
Okay, just there's a couple more questions. We're speaking live with Maya McFadden. She's with the New Haven Independent. Also, I want to thank Bob McCormick for calling in as well with some nice couple questions. Now, what is one of the biggest challenges, would you say, facing our youth today? And you're a young person as well, right? And and I know you got to keep yourself motivated and inspired. But what is one of the biggest challenges facing our youth today?
I It's kind of hard to pinpoint it to one thing, but in an attempt to, I would say it really, from my perspective, kind of just boils down to the sense of having people around them that not only motivate them, like from just like paying attention to them, but like are directly telling them like, I want you to do, like, you can do great things, like you can succeed, like just those like I think that's something that is somewhat undervalued. Like even if you're a parent and you're the best parent in the world and you're doing the best you can, not every parent tells their child like you're going to be successful one day. Like they believe it and they know it, but it's not always said out loud. And I think that's one thing that youth are dealing with. It does take, I feel like, a mental toll on you if you don't feel like you have that energy around you, that support system around you, and you could be surrounded by a million people, but if they're not directly telling you or even just showing you that they're there for you, I think it has an impact, and I think we're kind of seeing that with youth, because that was, I mean, even connecting it to like COVID and students being home all the time, um, and just doing stuff remote. You don't have that teacher in front of you who is telling you like, just think on it, like you can do it, like Maya, you can, like you just solve, like not just solve the problem, but like just take 2 more minutes and you'll do it. You can get through it. I think there's a huge difference from hearing that firsthand and having that like motivation kind of be transferred to you in person, and just only being on the computer and having like teachers tell you like finish this test in 5 minutes. Like, and obviously like teachers are doing the best they can, and it is like very hard to teach. I don't think I'm glad I graduated before COVID hit, and it was literally just months before. Um, but I don't think I could have gotten through education and learning during the COVID period. And I think it is kind of underestimated just how much of a toll that has on students. So I would say, yeah, just to wrap that up, like I think students and young people in New Haven and beyond don't always hear that they're going to be successful. There's a lot of people around them that believe it, but to actually hear it is very different and can make a huge impact.
Okay, I got one final question. What advice would you give someone that wants to be a journalist?
Hmm. Um.
Especially somebody young.
Yeah. I would say this was actually a thought earlier, and I'm glad you asked because I completely forgot about it. I think that when you're young and getting into journalism, and probably maybe every career field, you well, maybe not every career field, but specifically journalism, you kind of jump into it looking at how it was done in the past. Obviously, you get a reference point to just how like the past journalists, the past folks who have um, done the work. And I think for me, I always saw journalism and reporters as like sneaky people, like having these anonymous resources or sources, and like hearing from Joe, like, oh, this school is closing down, and but don't quote me. So then you have to go to the principal and say, I know your school is closing down, and you don't definitely know, but you kind of just present it like that. I feel like that's how I always saw journalism, like watching older movies and just like reading up on stuff. So I would say, in terms of advice, kind of to throw that out the window. I think journalism is very valuable when you come into it with just honesty, when you tell and explain folks like what is the angle of your story, why are you approaching them, obviously, but sometimes it's easy to like reach out to folks for a comment or a conversation and just say, I need your comment on this topic, but you're not necessarily explaining what your story is going to get into, whether good, bad, whatever. Um, and I just think honesty is the key. It's very simple and whatnot, but I just think it's easy to be young and feel like I want to do my job correctly, so I'm going to be a little bit sneaky or something. But in reality, the best way you can do your job as a reporter is just being honest with folks. Like even when it comes also down to saying like, hey, I don't know much about that. Like, what do you mean when you say when you're referencing this law? Like, I haven't heard of that, or I don't know much about it. Like, just being comfortable with um, being honest about where you're at.
All right, now, Maya, how can someone get in contact with you? I know Dr. Wayne's going to put it up on the screen on Facebook. If someone listening want to get a hold of you, contact you, what's your contact information?
So my email, which is probably, I check my email unhealthily often. So my email is probably the best place, and it's McFadden, MCFA, and then my first name, MAYA, and the number 0 at gmail.com. And then I also, that's another thing, I've gained a lot of contacts in my phone. I probably, when I started as a reporter, I had like 15 contacts at most. Now I probably have like 500. So if you want to reach out over phone, my number is 203-980-6725.
All right. I just want to thank you for stopping by W.J.R.G Radio. It's been a blessing. You're a blessing to our community. I've learned a lot about what you do and the New Haven Independent. I want to thank Dr. Wayne McCray. Do you have any other questions for Maya?
Well, only thing I would just say, we gotta definitely have you back,
Yes.
and and looking forward to seeing you at some of the events that's coming up. But truly, I like what you said about being honest in journalism, and a lot of times, you know, we don't get a lot of coverage in areas that is needed,
Right.
for the heart of the community. And I want to thank you for all that you do and making sure that, we are able to touch hearts through journalism and the media process because, we we hear a lot of journalists, they like to come out for all the bad stuff.
Right.
But, there's more good stuff than bad stuff that's happening in the community. And that's where we want to be able to have more impact on, really reaching the heart of the community.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for all that you do in touching the hearts of our community.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys a lot.
All right. Well, without further ado, just want to thank you, like I said, for stopping by the radio station. And, we're going to get you back.
Definitely.
We got to get you back on the air.
For sure.
For sure. And I want you to keep up the great work what you're doing.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work. You're young, you have a lot of inspiration, and make sure you be an inspiration to somebody else. So Dr. Wayne, you close us out.
Well, only thing I would say at this time, I want to thank you for taking action first. So if you can say that with me, I appreciate it. We say action first.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
That's some more great gospel
Thank you
music
guys.
on W.J.R.G.